This is Basket Case Clubs, CPR Group's podcast where we turn basket case clubs into showcase clubs. Welcome back for another edition of Basket Case Clubs, CPR Group's podcast. Oh, you've just heard all of that in the intro, so I don't need to go through it again. Instead of doing that, I'm going to introduce I was going to give it away with you, older or younger than Steve. Brother.
You came pretty close.
Steve. How you doing,
Good
man?
evening. I'm pretty well. How you doing?
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, really excited because we've got some light at the end of the tunnel. We're going to have some sport playing around again soon, and we've got some excited committee members and even exciteder kiddies ready to get playing again.
Yeah, excited parents looking forward to them getting back to school. It's funny that you say, we'll be seeing people back out playing sport, and it was only this afternoon when the family and I were in the car and we were driving past a football field, and I said, gosh, it's going to be kind of strange to see people playing sport again. It's going to be this whole readjustment that we've got to go through, and obviously that'll include people getting back into the office for work or back onto the work site, kids back in the school. But sporting venues, which have been, for many people, their second home, that have been vacated for so long are going to be, become ghost towns, are going to be reactivated, and people are going to have to readjust. It'll be a really nice feeling, I think, though, for most people to get back in their clubs.
There's going to be some element of weirdness about it, though. This whole, I don't know if I told you, but I ran past a dude at the park on the path, and it's not a compliant path by today's standards, but it'll be 1.2 meters wide, so it's a reasonable width path. This dude must have been, I don't know, maybe, look, by his looks, I'd say mid-70s. By his attitude, I'm going to say mid-700s. Like, he's just been on the earth too long. And instead of being nice and being a pleasant member of society, as we ran past, he's held his arm out as if, this is 1.5 meters. You run outside that, thank you very much. So I think the weirdest thing in watching people play sport is going to be watch them do a scrum or just a tackle and not rush to the sideline and all go with hand sanitizer and be rubbing it on their faces.
It's going to be pretty quickly forgotten about when the competitive nature of sport creeps back into our psyche.
Yes.
That's so funny.
If you want an uncontested try, just sneeze a couple of times and get the ball. Achoo! Look out!
I reckon that'll work for a week. COVID dry. We'll just let him have it.
God. It'd work once. One of those sorts of tactics.
Hey, this is going to be some kind of record. We've digressed before even introducing what we're talking about.
All right. Well, let me tell you a story then. So it wasn't that many years ago. It might have been 4 years ago, working with a club, and the treasurer, who had been treasurer for the club for a long time, had taken a step back. There was a bit of that typical, when you're on the inner and then you become on the outer because new people come on. So she'd been there a long time, and some people thought, look, it's probably time for you to move on. We need some new blood and we need some new people to do stuff. After a year, it turns out that Liz was actually holding the club together. But in the time that Liz was gone, some significant changes were made. And one of those changes was to move from a version of MyOb that Liz ran on her computer that was so old that it couldn't run anything beyond Windows 95.
Oh my
this thing
God.
wouldn't even take XP home. That's how old it was. And the laptop, if you held it up, was kind of the thickness of a phone book. So at the time, state-of-the-art technology, but now you're looking at that and going, what is that brick? What do you do? But that was the only computer that ran that version of MyOb.
It probably needed 3/4-inch floppies to do updates.
I thought you were going to say 3-phase power to run it. But quite possibly. So
Wow.
anyway, in that year, we had transitioned the club away from the old system and into an online accounting package. And not wanting to mention any names, it was the New Zealand company that begins with an X and sounds like zero. And it was great for everybody who didn't know how to drive the old version and the old way of doing things. And you remember what computers looked like in the 90s, that
Mm.
clunky, grey, boxy, if you don't know how to drive this, it's on you,
Yep.
to the
And
shine.
if you don't have twice as much time as you'd like to allocate, you're screwed to
Yeah,
whatever
yeah,
task it is you want to do.
exactly. To this new shiny user interface that anyone who knows how to drive anything can get behind and go,
Yep.
oh, I know what that means. Oh, you want a code for that? Well, this is income from the sale of a shirt. So, oh, look, there it is. Click. And it was just intuitive and everything was fine. So in that year of transition, when then Liz ended up coming back onto the committee, because they realized that she was holding it together, and I don't, I wasn't a fly on the wall at the time, but I don't think anyone ever said, oh, maybe we shouldn't have ever asked her politely or impolitely to move on. But I don't know whether any of that happened or whether it's just the nature of time taking its course.
Yep.
But she came she came back, and I remember being on the phone. I remembered the phone call, and she said, "Oh, Michael, I don't really like this zero thing. I can understand why people didn't like the old version, but I just don't understand it." And I said, "Okay, I understand, but having been involved in the transition, can you do me a favor?" And we'd been working together for long enough that been out to dinner together enough times talking turkey, that she said, "Oh, okay." I said, "Can you give it a month?" And she said, "Oh, okay." And I remember the next phone call better than I remember that one, when we were on the phone, and there were, I don't know, a grant acquittal or something had come up and we were on the phone. But the first thing that she launched into was, "Oh, Michael, this zero is fantastic. I just get it now." And it's made life so. I went, thank goodness for that. Okay, that was a real win. Thank goodness for that. Thank
Yeah.
goodness that it was just a bit of time to get over that hurdle. And I've talked about it a lot and the COVID thing's been an interesting one where we don't know what the monster looks like yet, so we're scared. Now we know what the monster looks like. We know what our path back to resuming play is going to look like. So everyone's okay to get back into it and figure out how they fit. And it was exactly the same. Once you'd overcome the fact that things looked different, but the way we were coding things in the general ledger was exactly the same, even though it was easier to find, and
Mm.
customers were easier to link to the purchases they had made or the supplies that we had made to them. It just made life so much easier. And the fact that anyone could do it, not just one person, was a win in itself. It meant that all of a sudden, the treasury job in that club is not just one that needs Liz. And heaven
Yeah.
forbid Liz moves or is transferred. And she worked for the Queensland government at the time. So if she had been transferred to another region or something and had gone, then it's, well, we're going to have to start again or reconstruct things and pay a lot of money to reconstruct. So the
Mm.
lesson in all of that really rung true and has made me tell lots of stories, tell this story a lot and lots of similar stories, is that time of volunteers is so valuable, but sometimes undervalued. And if you just take the step to invest a little bit of time now to build a technological system around your business processes, that you will make that time back. And even if it takes the transition for an entire chart of accounts from an old system into an online system, and not meaning to pay commercial favor to Xero just because I know it because I use it, but MyOb Online and QuickBooks and Waves, these are fantastic systems that are
Mm.
there, and some of them cost a bit of money, but the amount of time that you save by using those systems means that the time will be better invested doing other things. Like if you're no longer spending time just building your finances around a really archaic version of MyOb, all of a sudden a treasurer has the ability to go, oh, there's a button here that says budget. What happens if I look at that? And then they're starting
Mm.
to build great business processes and practices around things that they've never done because they've never had the time to do it. So there you go. There's the intro that says that I'd like to start a discussion with you, Steve, around clubs using technology to help them make better decisions and to improve their operations.
Yes. And I say yes so excitedly because we're nerds. You and I, and really everyone at CPR Group. I made a joke on last week's webinar where we talked all things technology, about the fact that we kind of like to outdo each other in our level of nerdism, and find new and innovative ways to do things that save us time. So just to go back quickly to that time and money discussion, often we're met with some degree of resistance when we start to talk technology in the volunteer world, and we often pose the question to the volunteers, some of whom are giving us some of that resistance, and others who are trying to bring other
Come
people along on the journey.
guys, let's go.
Which is more important, time or money? And it's a really interesting question to throw to volunteers because they often get tripped up, don't they?
Yeah, it's time until it's volunteer time, and then, well, hang on, if we've got to pay if we don't get that time, no,
Yep.
we'll just take the time, even if it takes Liz 17 hours a week to
Yep.
do the accounts in the 95 version of MyOb.
Yep.
And even to transition to MyOb Online and to have that new shiny interface, or Wave for free or Zero for what is it, 50, 60 bucks a month, and all of this will change if you're listening to this in the future. And hopefully there'll be new players in the market. And that's what's so good about it. But that's 17 hours a week. You're not going to do 17 hours a month, which means that the extra time is still going to be invested in volunteering, but it's going to be invested far better. And you can't just take and take and take, because Liz left partly because of the burnout for all the time it was taking. And hopefully doesn't exist in that club anymore.
Yeah, well, the very fact that she was doing so much, I'm sure, data entry with that old system, compare that with any of these modern cloud-hosted systems where money shows up in your bank account and automatically it shows up in your accounting package. Sure, you'll need to do some reconciliation, but
and some cross-checking and making sure it's right. Yeah,
of
at least
course.
you don't have to do the literally get it in there.
And I draw the parallel there often to the old hard copy membership form, which not that long ago was commonplace.
Wow, 2018.
There you go. So, clubs would have a sign-on day, and all the mums and dads and senior players would turn up and they'd fill in their hard copy form and they'd leave it with the poor
Registrar.
management committee members. Well, and registrar alone wasn't enough, that person to collect all the forms. So all the committee had been there. And I think back to when I signed my kids on to Little Athletics, and that would have been maybe 2014. And it was online, but you had to go to the club, and the poor committee members were there doing the sign on behind the computers, asking you questions, answers to which, they'd plug into the online registration system. So they were on the
Some
journey.
of it's typing like this.
Yep. The old Cropec. Yeah.
So that's loud enough. Here, let me bring my keyboard closer.
Yeah.
Hang on.
No, that's too fast. Yeah.
I just deleted a whole heap of stuff that was on my screen.
Hold on, you didn't
this
stop
is me
recording,
clicking
did you?
Command Z.
So, that ridiculous amount of time that manual data entry takes, and a bunch of other things that we'll touch on in this discussion about, available and very affordable, if not free, technology that can save a whole bunch of time of volunteers. The old way of doing things is just so absurd, but when volunteers take over from someone who's been using a Windows 95 compatible version of MyOb that would have woefully out of date tax tables and would mean so much extra manual work, not to mention the data entry, which we've touched on, the easy thing is to just keep using that same system. The easy thing is not
the
to
cost of the
say,
time. Not
exactly.
considering it's
That's
an
right.
investment of time to do the change. Sure, it's going to take you an extra 17 hours this week to transition, but that's extra
it.
17 hours buys you the 17 you're not spending next week, and next week.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and that, the oversensitivity to price that we experience in the not-for-profit world is, I think, a huge barrier to the uptake of technology that costs anything.
Yeah.
So
So you
And
you
zero
not
is seen as so expensive, but like you say, 40, 50, 60, you know, because there's a 25% discount on that particular
yeah,
product.
so 450
Um,
bucks a year or something.
yep. So realistically, if you've got to place some realistic value on the time that is given to you by your volunteers as
Yeah.
well.
Yep.
And you know, if you're just looking at the dollars, you're going to lose the lizards. You're going to lose the
Yeah.
people who get burnt out from that really archaic way of doing stuff.
Yep. So what I thought we'd do is there'll be no doubt chances for us to delve into some of these solutions in
Mm.
episodes completely about themselves. I thought we might do a quick flyby of some of the stuff that clubs should be using. Obviously, if you're listening to this and you're not using any of these systems and you go, oh, I didn't know that sort of thing existed, just holler and we'll point you in the right direction. And there are ways for nonprofits to get a lot of this stuff. If it's not free, it's cheap. And there are
Yep.
always entry points that are at least free or cheap. And even
Mm.
if you end up building on your paid systems as you go down the track. Perhaps we should start though by reminding ourselves, if not everyone else, and for the benefit of our listeners, what happens is we build on our systems as a new need arises, and what's turning out to probably be 5 to 10 years, we're needing to do a refresh. And a refresh means that we're washing out of the system the stuff that we're using, just because it's SaaS system, software as a service, SaaS. So it means that it's online. There's no software to download. You just pay a subscription, whether it's monthly or yearly, and then you've got access to all of those systems. Some of those we have ended up duplicating because functionality of one system has increased over time while we've been paying for another system, which means we end up paying for two systems that do the same thing. So it is important that you don't just let your eyes go, oh my goodness, get starry eyes and go, this is fantastic, and you just go and do everything. There's certainly no need to do that. And like everything, take a structured approach that links to your strategy, but also remember that technology is a fantastic servant but a terrible master. So you've got to be careful not to let the tail wag the dog.
Yeah, and I think it was only last week that I jokingly said to you the greatest example of technology becoming a master is social media, and people who are so absorbed by social media and are, on various platforms instead of doing work when they're on the clock at work.
Yep.
And you see people out to dinner, well, not recently, but you see a couple out to dinner, and the only time they interact is when they say, oh, look at this, and they show each other their phones, which I think is a horrible indictment on society's just overindulgence on social media. But that's probably something that we can delve more deeply into down the track, because it's a great tool for communication in the right way. But we've got to remember that we should be in charge of the technology and apply that strategic approach to selecting the right stuff for us. And what works for one club might not work for the next club. It shouldn't just simply be a matter of saying, okay, well, the tool that we're going to use for financial management, or the tool that we're going to use for running online meetings or storing our data in the cloud, it should be the same as the club down the road, or the other club in our league, because the other one works really well for them. So it must be the right one to go with. Do your research and make sure that you satisfied yourself that you've found the one that's going to best meet your needs. So why don't we start there? Why don't we start with the data storage stuff?
Sure. So look, I've got to give Google a plug here. Google started as a search engine, but has become, so search is such a small part of what Google does. I was sitting at dinner earlier this evening, and seriously, my youngest has his computer, and he's not doing a school assignment. He's done his school assignment, but he's using this thing called, I think it's Google Music Maker. Now it's just a thing that you just, Google it, and it enables you to play. You don't need to know how to write music. You just go, oh, this color is red, and that gives me that note. Okay, so if I go 2 spaces above, oh, okay, so now I want that note. And now, as a muso, I know that that
Wow.
means that that's a tone because it's two spaces above. One space would be a semitone. But he's been able to create, and he's doing this as part of a music assignment, so he knows that too. But you don't need to know that. And if it's a
Mm,
long bar, it's a long note. Ba or ba is a short note. And you can just build that. And he's creating these cool little things that we're all sitting at the dinner table going, that's fantastic. So not only are they doing that, they've got Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Forms, Google Slides, Google Vault, Google your contacts, your calendar, Google Mail. They've built an entire suite. Oh, that's why it's called G Suite. I'd like to say I only just figured that out, but I'm not that silly. They've done a great job, particularly in the last, I'm going to say 9 years. So Google's been around longer than that, but I think in the last 9 years, particularly, they have just listened to I don't know. It feels like they're listening to me sitting here going, oh, gee, I wish Google Docs did this. Oh, gee, I wish Gmail had that
mm,
functionality. Somewhere in the world, somebody's built that. And it's only a matter of, in both of those instances, literally months before I go, oh, that wasn't there before. And it's
yeah.
done. So the power of their systems, and of course then Google Drive as the big storage platform, means that at an entry level for free, clubs have, instead of carrying around the USB, I was going to reach out and grab one, but I don't even know where I have USB sticks anymore because I got the cloud. You don't need to be carrying data around with you when you can access that data using the device that you're going to have in your pocket or on your desk or that your friend next to you has.
And the beauty of going with one of the big players in the market, like a Google, is that their systems work with every device.
Yep.
Whether you buy an Android device, an Apple device, whether you're on an internet cafe computer on the other side of the world, your device will be compatible with Google's products. And there's a lot
Absolutely.
to be said for that.
Yeah, definitely. So we should mention obviously about data security because this is a point that's taken a bit too
Yep.
lightly, I think, in the not-for-profit sector. And my data is worth something to me because it has my photos. It has, like, if you dig deep enough, you're going to find my bank records, my credit card details. Now, I don't want you to be able to do that. So I'll protect that. I will use different passwords on every site and I will have a password manager, even if it's Google Chrome that I'm using that remembers my passwords. But if you are doing what you're doing, you're in Turkey and you're in an internet cafe, log out, clear
Mm,
the history. Just do the things that are important to protect your information. Just because it's the secretariat email address doesn't mean that that's any less important. And we've got stories of fraud where people, just
yep.
by cracking into or looking over the shoulder or going onto a computer where somebody had already been, was then able
Mm,
to defraud clubs for tens of thousands of dollars. So be very careful with your passwords for everything that we're about to mention. But as far as data storage goes, Google's one option, Amazon's another one, Microsoft is another one. There's the iCloud from Apple, um, Box, Dropbox. These are all fantastic systems. The one that you use, and this will be the same for everything that we're about to whiz through quickly in our flyby, pick the one that works for you. There's not one
yep.
right answer, but as Steve said, don't shy away from spending a bit of money because you'll save a lot of time, but also
Mm.
don't just pick the system that somebody else has picked because it's right for them. If you understand your strategy and what you're trying to achieve by using any of these pieces of software, then the right one will find you.
Mm. Yeah, and uh, you, if you're not aware of some of the avenues to access discounted or free software, again, as you mentioned earlier, Mick, definitely touch base with us,
Yep.
because it is whilst it can be seen as a barrier to some organisations, it's actually a relatively straightforward process, and it's just a matter of proving that you're a not-for-profit entity, and a whole world of discounted software and also hardware and the like will
Yep.
open up to you.
And there's no
And
commission paid to us for people contacting us to do that. It's just we genuinely want to make sure people are connecting to the right places.
that's right. And we often give the example of when we went into the cloud simply being a marketing term that identifies a situation where your data is stored somewhere distant from you, probably on the other side of the world, and accessed via the internet.
Yep.
And so we first made the jump to the cloud from
Early
local.
2011.
2011, so almost
Very
10 years
early.
ago. And at the time, we were considering a number of options, one of which was to have a server built to live in our office, and it, along with all of the virtual private network connections that we're going to have to connect our various offices, was going to cost almost 30 grand.
Yeah.
And within, a couple of short years of us having invested that money, it would have been obsolete, and we would have had to
Do
invest
it again.
significantly in upgrading, and we would have had to manage all of the data ourselves. Whereas
Yeah.
simply paying a subscription to one of these providers means that you divest all of that responsibility to them, and they do the backing up, and you can access the data from your phone or from your computer, or and we've never looked back.
No. The other thing is that every single hard disk I have ever owned, including all of them that are in a cardboard box in that cupboard right over there, have died. Every one, the one that's sitting there backing up my computer right now, it's going to die. So it's going out of service. Hang on, I'll look at the date. Yeah. Oh, next month is when it's going out of service, and it will be replaced, because that's what you do. So the other thing is that so I'm the opposite end of the bell curve from a Luddite. So I'm very happy to push and to push and to push, but I understand that that's also a weakness, and at some point things are going to go down. And when the internet goes down and we can't access stuff, you got to have your own workarounds. So I understand that, but I'm still confident enough in the security of the systems that we're using and the availability of the data to put my faith in it, to use it, and to just give it a red hot crack. And it's been working really well so far. Maybe we've been in the right place, and now's a good time to mention Zoom, for instance, that it's just been through some hiccups with the potential breaches of data security for them. But what have they done about it? Straight away, they've very overtly fixed it and made massive changes to their operations. So if a weakness is found and it's discovered very quickly, then that's good. But I also understand that there are times when I will get hacked, and last year I had to redo my credit card 3 times because there's so many international subscriptions on my Visa card that it got hacked because it's exposed. So that's going to happen. And the bank supported me each time, and I've made the changes that I've needed to, and I'm running, it's May, and I haven't had to do it since December. So
world's been too busy, man.
All those people on the deep web haven't been finding my credit card anymore. Oh, Mr. Connolly, yes, we're going to steal your data again. Got away with it. So video conferencing is a good point to go to next, Steve, given that a lot of people have been doing that now, forced into it through the coronavirus shutdown. But there are great tools to do it. And hopefully one of the things that comes out of this is that our volunteers aren't going to have to drive to the club for a 3-hour meeting and then drive home. They'll get online at 7:30. They'll have a meeting. They'll be sitting there in their jammies. Somebody will be sitting there drinking whiskey or wine or something, and they'll go, I want to get back out to my wife because she's lonely. So
more interesting
this up, please? More interesting than the color of the shirts.
So yes, Zoom, Skype has kind of gone by the wayside in recent years, and in my limited understanding, it's more an assumption that Microsoft has been focusing more of its efforts on Teams and the video.
It's the same, the interface, the usage of Teams is very similar to Skype for Business. So it looks the same, it feels the same, it functions the same. It's solid as, man. For somebody who's anti-Microsoft in my life generally, man, I love that stuff. It works really well. But we're also using Zoho a lot, and Zoho's an Indian company that make it very clear that they will never sell your data. And that's been their foundation for more than 22 years. There's GoToMeeting,
Google Hangouts.
Yeah, and we've used just about all of them. I think there's a dozen, I think, of them that I've been using over the last couple of months. Yeah, and they all function. They all work really well. So I don't have a particular preference, except for the advice would be use it.
Yeah, use something. And even to throw into the mix, Facebook Messenger, a lot of people, particularly, but no, I'm not even going to throw that generalization in there. A lot of people have Facebook Messenger on their mobile device. So I've often found when I'm engaging with a management committee of an organization that's located geographically some distance from me, that we'll talk through the different options for having a video conference. And I'll say, do you have any of these tools? Some of which we've mentioned. No. Facebook Messenger. Oh yeah, we've all got that on our phone. Yeah, let's go with that. Yeah. So yeah, it's but like you say, just use it.
Yep.
Use something.
Yeah. So look, I reckon that's probably a good point to have a bit of a break, Steve, because there's so many more tools that we can talk about. But I reckon we'll come back and do this again, maybe in a couple of weeks or so, because there are some great opportunities for clubs to be making really good use of these tools.
Yeah. Yep. So when it comes to money, when it comes to social media, as we've touched on, there are heaps of tools out there. We're nerds. Let's come back and talk about it again.
Happy
This is
to
a good
do
way to
so.
get people to tune back in.
Yeah. So in summarizing the key messages, don't be afraid enough to stay away from it. Be cautious enough to be careful about the decisions you make. Link those decisions to strategy, and don't be afraid to spend a few bucks here and there, because as soon as you spend a few bucks, you become the real customer. If you're getting it for free, then you can't be complaining about the ads or the lack of features.
Or the
because you're
poor level of service.
you're what's being sold. People will be advertising to you because you're getting it for free. So to overcome that, it's a few dollars to start, but it's a good way to dabble. And the final point is, as soon as you crack a nanny with whatever you're using, just download it or port it directly somewhere else. So all of these
some new system. Yeah.
Google Drive, for instance, has porting system. Oh, you don't like Dropbox anymore? Well, click here to get all of your data from Dropbox straight into your drive. Love it.
It's almost like insurance, isn't it? Yeah. If you're signing up with us, if you're coming from somewhere else, we'll give you a discount.
Yeah. So that's the benefit of SaaS, software as a service.
Yeah.
It's just fantastic. Steve, as always. Oh, sorry, I was about to wrap up.
Really quickly. No, I've just thought of something, a really nice way to tie all of this back to your story about Liz, which is, wouldn't it be wonderful if more people just gave it a month? Just give it a month. So for those people who are listening and you're struggling with some of those Luddites, some of the naysayers, some of the people who are throwing up challenges.
People who are genuinely and rightly scared because they've seen things get hacked. All of those
horror stories. Yep.
All those people who had their iCloud photos hacked, those nudie photos of those celebrities. Don't post nudes for a start. It's probably a good place.
But you're right. Just give it a month, and I'm sure that the vast majority of those naysayers who come on the journey with you will realize that they should have done so earlier.
So long as you give it a good month, though, because if you give it a month and you don't do anything and you don't actually
use it
and learn, and you go, well, it didn't help me at all. But did you log in?
Yeah.
Did you actually look at it? Did you watch that video I sent you?
Give it a red hot crack.
Yeah. Steve, as
get
always,
in there and have some fun.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, like this is fun. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you about nerdy stuff, and I'm glad that we haven't even scratched the surface of where we can go with this, so we can come back to it.
So am I. Yep, look forward to talking further about technology and continuing to get on Nerd On.
Perfect. Thanks, Steve. See ya.
Thanks, Pete. Bye.